Get your ears wrapped around the Golden State Media Concepts Basketball Podcast. All the scoop you need to know from college basketball to the NBA and even March Madness. News of your rising stars. Topics on and off the hardwood. This is the Golden State Media Concepts Basketball Podcast.
All right, guys, thank you for listening to the GSMC Basketball Podcast. I'm your host, Casey Foreman. Thanks for checking in. Hopefully everybody had a nice weekend. Hopefully everybody had a chance to catch that play-in game over the weekend. It was a great game, great addition to this postseason, to the seeding games by the NBA. Hopefully everybody had a chance to watch the game, watch some basketball this weekend. But Sunday, yesterday, was like one of the first times in weeks we haven't had basketball on basically all day. You know, this weekend was, so it was kind of upsetting because I'm used to watching these games all day, so it was kind of upsetting, but we're getting it right back today. Don't worry, the NBA postseason kicks off today, but I want to go ahead and start with Ja Morant and the Memphis Grizzlies, you know, how they played in the play-in game, and just I want to talk about that team, that player going forward. Then I want to talk about the New Orleans Pelicans, their decision to fire their head coach. I want to break down the move, maybe find out why, and discuss some possible candidates for that job. After that, I want to talk about the first round of the postseason some more. I talked about it on my last podcast. I want to talk about it a little bit more this week, today. But this time, I want to focus on the potential upsets that we might see in the first round. So don't go anywhere. Make sure you guys stick around until that portion of the show. But stick around to the very end of the show as well, because then I want to discuss the NBA's play-in game that happened this past weekend. I want to talk about why the NBA needs to really think about keeping it and installing it every season going forward. Don't go anywhere. Stick around for my opinion on that, a very interesting topic that is. But I want to talk about, I want to start with, like I said, Ja Morant, the Memphis Grizzlies. All year, Ja has been leading the Grizzlies and, has been maintaining, the level of play to keep them, for the most part, keep them in that 8th spot. However, this weekend, Ja and the Grizzlies lost to Damian Lillard and the Portland Trail Blazers in the play-in game. It happened on Saturday. If Ja and the Grizzlies had won, they would have had to play them again on Sunday. So Ja would have had to win 2 straight games. Would have been very tough for the Grizzlies to do it. It wasn't in their favor, I should say. It really wasn't this year. I shouldn't say that, because at the beginning of the seeding games, they did have a 3.5 game lead. We shouldn't forget about that. They did have some pretty disappointing games in the bubble. But as far as Saturday, Portland was simply the clutch team late, and they looked like the veteran team. Damian Lillard went off, or didn't go off. He didn't shoot the ball particularly well, but still ended up with 31 points, 10 assists. CJ had 29 points. He shot decently well from the floor, pretty well from the floor. Had a clutch 3-point shot at the end of regulation, at the end of the game, so to basically seal the victory for them, or almost seal the victory for them. So CJ shot the ball clutch, shot the ball well. Carmelo Anthony, he added 21 points, also had a clutch 3-point shot at the end of the game to seal the victory. So CJ and Carmelo, both with clutch 3-point shots at the end of the game. Nurkic added 20 points, or 20 plus points and 20 plus rebounds. I believe he was suffering, he was mourning from the death of his grandmother. He was, debating even playing, decided to go out there and play, and ended up with a 20-20 game. So he played great, super happy he could go out there and play that well. My condolences to him and his family. But like I said, Portland played better late in the game, and they simply looked like the older, veteran team, which they are. Okay, you can't really argue with that. But the Grizzlies played a very tough, and it was a very close game. Brandon Clark, I believe he's a rookie this year, helped or contributed with 20 points. Dylan Brooks, a young player, also contributed with 20 points. So you got 40 points from those two young guys right there. Valanciunas helped out with 22 points and 17 rebounds, almost a 20-20 game himself. Ja Morant plays great, has a career night scoring-wise, drops 35 points, 8 assists, and it came out yesterday or so that he was actually playing with a broken thumb, a fractured thumb, in the last 4 or so games in the bubble, including that final play-in game, which he scored his career high points. So Ja he's made of the right stuff, it seems like. It seems like the Grizzlies made the perfect choice with him at that second pick last year in the draft. And him playing through that injury in the biggest game of his career is a testament to who he is as a player. And yeah, I'm just super happy he could do that, and I'm super happy he went out there and played. Hopefully now he definitely has time to rest, get that thumb to heal. I know if he would have made the 8th spot, he was playing, so he was going to play no matter what. Hurt or not hurt, he was playing. So props to Ja going out there with a career night with 35 points despite the injury to his thumb. But the Grizzlies, looking at the game statistics, the Grizzlies shot better from the floor and from the 3-point line. So the Grizzlies arguably played the better game on paper. Simply, like I said, clutch time, down late in the game. They couldn't get it done. They couldn't come back against the older veteran team. That's simply what it was. The younger team couldn't beat the old veteran team with Carmelo, Damian Lillard. Okay, so they had vets on that roster. They stepped up in crunch time, and also CJ McCollum. They stepped up, and you don't want to take anything away from Memphis after this loss. I'm happy they made it into the play-in game, but yeah, don't take anything away from them. Looking back at it next year, or last year, sorry. Let's go back. Looking at it last year, who would have thought after they would have drafted the point guard from Murray State, who would have thought he would have gone to Memphis and had such a great impact right away? Who would have thought that? I know I didn't guess this big an impact right away. Who could have seen this big an impact right away? But again, he has had such a big impact right away. Great for that Memphis organization. Ja played 67 games, averaged 18 points and 7 assists. The Grizzlies won 34 of those games. A very young team, like I said. Dylan Brooks, also on the team. He's 24 years old. He averaged 16 points this season. Jaren Jackson Jr., who just, hurt his meniscus, I think. He averaged 17 points and over a block a game. He's only 20 years old, I'm sorry. Brandon Clark, he's 23 years old. He averaged 12.5 points and 6 rebounds. They also have young guys like Grayson Allen, Josh Jackson, Jordan Bell. So they have a lot of young guys on that roster, which I am guessing who are only going to improve and get better. So I see this Memphis organization growing and getting better. I don't really see a whole lot stopping them. I should say that up until the Jaren Jackson injury. Like I say, he just tore maybe his meniscus. I believe that was the injury that he suffered. Either way, that's a big blow for Memphis. Like I said, averaging 17 points, a block and a half per game. But let's think about it. For Memphis to go out and, this year to be one game away from making the postseason, a year after trading away their franchise players in Mike Conley and Marcus Saul. Tony Allen, all other guys were on that roster, but, especially this past year, they traded Gasol, they traded Conley, and it was because they're building towards the future. They were exiting the era, the grit and grind era they were in. Still somewhat of that, basketball style they're playing in, but they exited that style with Fizdale and stuff. New head coach, new franchise guy in Ja Morant, new young pieces, like I said, in Jackson and Brooks, Grayson Allen, Brandon Clark, lots of young pieces coming up, new up and coming head coach. So it's looking promising for the Grizzlies, and again, who would have saw this coming, them being so relevant, so good, a year after trading their franchise players in Marcus Saul and Mike Conley, guys who got them to the postseason many times, guys who pushed the Golden State Warriors to 6 games at times, so in the postseason, okay, so that team was legit. It was really tough. It still is tough to win in Memphis, in that arena. But great organization, great guy in Ja Morant. I would love to see one more piece paired with Ja, because, like I said, they do have a lot of good young pieces, but I would love to see one more piece. Maybe they trade one of the guys they have. I don't love any of the players really in this year's draft, so I wouldn't go crazy in this year's draft trying to get any players or anything. I could be wrong. I really could be wrong. I'm not too sure on that, but from what I do know, and it's quite a bit, I'm not sold, 100% sold on too many people in this draft. So I wouldn't do any big moves this year if I was the Memphis Grizzlies, but I think they do need one more piece with Ja Morant, one more, a Robin to his Batman, or maybe he's the Robin and they need one more bigger guy. I don't know, maybe a guy like Jaren Jackson who's going to be hurt probably a lot next year. Probably won't play at all, maybe, but maybe he eventually could step up and be the Robin or Batman to Ja, or maybe he could be, like I said, he could step up. But this injury with the meniscus, and that will take him out at least, I'm guessing, almost a year or so. So that's a setback for the organization and for his co-star. But maybe, the pieces like Brooks, Brooks, Clark, Grayson Allen, not Jordan, but maybe Grayson Allen can pop up and average some more points. Clark can bump up maybe 12 to 15 points. Dylan Brooks is at 16. Maybe he can get more to the 18 to 19, 20 point range. We'll see. You're asking a lot for some young players. Ja himself is going to improve. He's the rookie of the year this year. I've talked about it a few times on the show, but he's the rookie of the year, I think. Playing over 65, 67 games, 17, 18 points per game, 7 assists per game, almost a steal, getting them almost into the postseason. So yes, he is the rookie of the year. If you guys haven't already heard me say that or give my opinion on that matter, yes, he is the rookie of the year. Again, I think Ja needs one more piece paired with him, but I think he's going to do nothing but improve, be an all-star, be a potential all-NBA caliber guy. He's kind of like a Russell Westbrook-esque, but he can shoot, but he's intense and he can dunk, and I don't know. He needs to improve his shooting, but he definitely can shoot. Isn't a fantastic shooter, but definitely can shoot. A better shooter than a Westbrook, but at least at that age, definitely at that age. But has room to improve, definitely. But I'm really liking what I've been seeing so far from him. So I think the ceiling is very high from him, but the Grizzlies I think will continue to improve as a whole, and they will continue to fight for playoff spots in that Western Conference. Stick around until my third topic. I'm going to talk about teams in that Western Conference, how they're all getting better. How that the race for the 8th seed will continue on. It's my it's my final segment actually. So make sure you stick around for my final segment. But yes, the race for the 8th seed will continue in the future. I see it being close, if not closer in the future. But Ja and the Grizzlies, no harm for not making the postseason this year. You guys were one game away. That is a testament to the greatness, or, to the greatness of Ja and what he did this season, and how they really did overachieve. No one was in their favor. No one saw this coming, and they were a game away from being in the postseason again, a year after, not even a year after, trading their guys, their franchise guys, Gasol and Conley. So no one saw this coming. Props to them. I'm going to go ahead and take a quick break. When I come back, let's go ahead and discuss that move the New Orleans Pelicans just made, firing their head coach. Was it a good move? I'm going to go ahead and break it down, talk about maybe some candidates who might replace Alvin Gentry. So don't go anywhere. I'm going to be right back. All right, listen up, sports bettors. This is Casey, here to tell you about my favorite sports book, and it has to be BetUS. Football, basketball, baseball, they are all back, and that means it's time to get down your bets. I only endorse one sports book, and that is BetUS.com. Why? It's because BetUS is the pioneer in online betting with more than 25 years in the business. You guys need a sports book with integrity, longevity, and you guys need to know that you're going to get paid. You need a sports book that offers everything like live betting, MMA, golf, horses, esports, all sorts of entertainment, whatever you guys are into, all kinds of crazy prop bets and futures. You guys can call today at 1-800-MY-BET-US. That's 1-800-MY-BET-US. And they will walk you guys through getting started. It's a really quick and easy process. Nobody in the industry is going to give you guys a bigger bonus than BetUS. Join right now and mention GSMC, and you can get up to 150%. Again, up to 150% bonuses on your first deposit. Nobody can beat that in the business. Okay, I bet at BetUS. You guys should too. You guys can join today. Again, it's BetUS.com, or you guys can call 1-800-MY-BET-US. Again, 1-800-MY-BET-US. Mention GSMC to get 150% in bonuses on your first deposit. You guys can join today.
Are you looking for the very best NFL and college football podcast? Then check out the GSMC Football Podcast. Get the latest football news both on and off the field. From the NFL Draft to trades to the rumor mill to the NFL Combines, they got you covered. That's GSMCpodcast.com/football-podcast. Get updates on college rivalries, game day insights, and much, much more. It's football talk the way you want it. This show eats, sleeps, and breathes football. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
All right, welcome back. Like I said before the break, let's go ahead and talk about the Pelicans' decision to let go, to fire Alvin Gentry, their head coach. Let's go ahead and break down the move, because now the Pelicans are starting. They didn't wait too long. They got eliminated from the postseason a couple days ago, at the end of last week, and a few days go by, and man, they're not wasting any time. They are starting their off season right. They're getting rid of the head coach they don't have too much confidence in. They're getting rid of him, and they are starting fresh. They aren't letting it loom over their franchise. They're starting it right away. So props to them. They're not too confident. They don't think they have their guy. They let him go right as, in their first opportunity, they let him go. So I'm glad the Pelicans didn't wait, prolong the move. They did it right away. They also didn't do it in the middle of the season. They gave him one last chance. He couldn't make the playoffs and they let him go. So I understand, but he spent about 5 years as the head coach of the Pelicans. Before that, I think he was an assistant for some time in Golden State. He's been around the league, but he had his head coaching break. I think he's been head coach before. I'm not quite sure. Either way, 5 years or so with the Pelicans. More recently, when they entered the bubble, we had some high expectations for this young and talented team, but we really were let down from this Pelican team, or by this Pelican team. And at least I was let down because 2-6, their seeding schedule being their record being 2-6 in the bubble, despite having a easy schedule when you look at it on paper, is really disappointing and upsetting. You hope more from that up and coming young team. You hope for more, you hope for better. But you get what you get. It's a young team, and you get out from the game as much as you put into it ultimately. And we saw the Pelicans fail to make that 8th spot. Like I said, despite being favorited to, when you look at the percentages before, they really did have a high percentage of making the postseason. Again, of where they were in their rankings and the seeding schedule that was given to them. Alvin Gentry, in his tenure with the Pelicans, only made the playoffs once. Okay, one time in 5 seasons he made the playoffs. His total record was 175 to 225. Not terrible by any means, off by 50 games or so, but not terrible, but not great. Not a great winning record, but it wasn't a great, team he always had. He did always have, for the most part, an all-NBA guy in Anthony Davis when he was healthy, at least. Had DeMarcus Cousins for a little bit. Obviously now have a very young and talented up-and-coming roster. So he's had players, but, only made the postseason once in the 5 seasons. Like I said, went 175 for 225. Throughout the seeding games, at least in my opinion, from what I saw, I really questioned their offensive game plan, their attack. I really questioned what they were doing on the offensive end. We'll talk about the defensive end in a second, but on the offensive end, like I said, I really questioned what they were doing. It looked stagnant, it looked tight, it looked like a lot of meaningless passes, a bad shot sometimes at the end of the shot clock, or simply a bad shot. Or just some ISO ball and we're not moving the ball. So I saw a lot of that with the Pelican offense, especially early in these seeding games. They didn't really seem to have a plan of attack on offense at all times. But Zion and the whole minute restriction, time slot thing, the different things, I think that really hurt their flow in their offense. It definitely hurt Zion's approach to the game, but I think that threw off the flow of the offense. They didn't know who to play through. Zion's in 1 second, then a minute later he's gone, then 30 seconds he's back, so that can get confusing. That can be tough to run an offense that way. But I definitely think that had to do with their offensive troubles. But as far as the defensive end, because it was not just the offensive side of the ball that looked stagnant or that looked tight or meaningless. Because at some points their offense looked pretty good at times. It really did. But again, it could have been a lot sharper in crunch time, the times they really needed to. But anyway, the other side of the ball, defense, arguably could be the more important side of the ball sometimes. They played little to no defense whatsoever in the post, especially late in these seeding games. Not postseason. In the seeding games, it seems like they seem to play little to no defense, not care whatsoever about that side of the ball, simply caring about how many points they're scoring? Was it because of their offensive-minded coach and Alvin Gentry? Was he not focusing enough on the defensive side? Because they had some defensive pieces, okay? They have Zion, they have Lonzo, Drew Holiday, Derek Favors. They have defensive pieces who can get down and play some defense if they really want to. But we saw them fail to put in the effort. Little to no defense was played by their part, so I was disappointed, really disappointed in their defensive effort, but, honestly, I really thought they could have played better on offense. What was the offensive game plan? I need to see more plays ran for Zion. I need to see Zion in the game more for the time stretches. Why are you playing him 5-6 minutes in the first quarter and not playing him in the final 3 minutes? That doesn't make any sense in a close game. That doesn't make any sense to me. So I understand was Alvin Gentry the problem with this team, with the offense? Was he the thing holding back this young and talented offense and young and talented roster? It seems that maybe the Pelicans organization maybe they think he was the issue of not making the postseason. I do think that Zion, his frame and his, not his health, because obviously he's healthy, but, his shape, okay? His shape. How much he weighs, how much he can stay on the floor. He seems to be fatigued awfully quick. It might be, I think it's because of the weight he's carrying. He's only 6'6", yet seems to be over 300 pounds at this point. But so that's not good when you add all that up, for his knees, a guy who definitely has lots of injuries in his past, hasn't proven he can stay healthy for a long period of time. Weight problems is not something you want to have, as well as injury problems, because, you're setting yourself up for failure and for disappointment. So I do think that also had to do with them not making the postseason. Zion's shape in general, I think he needs to be in better shape. I think he needs to be able to be on the floor for longer periods of time. Maybe it wasn't the head coach. Maybe Zion needed to rest. I don't know the full story. But with them firing him so quickly after the seeding games ending, not making the postseason, in my opinion, it seems to be, they think Alvin was the problem. At least as of now, they think he was the problem. But again, he was an offensive-minded coach. I didn't see too many plays ran for Zion. I didn't seem to know the offensive game plan at times. Didn't know the defensive game plan whatsoever, if there even was one. But there were lots of factors going into it. I don't think it was just, the coaching. I do think they shot the ball. Alonzo Ball did not play well for most of the seeding games. Zion, again, the whole minutes restriction, he didn't seem to be in the best of shape. All those factors are going to factor in. No defense being played. So all of those were the reasons they didn't make the postseason. I don't think it was just the coaching. But since he is now gone and that position is open, let's go ahead and talk about who should take that place. Because I do think there are lots of people who are available and lots of candidates who could take this job. But who should take the place? It's a very young and talented up and coming roster. The Pelicans just hired within the last year a VP of basketball operations in David Griffin, a guy, a somewhat veteran guy who pretty much seems to know what he's doing. So they got their guy in the head office. Gentry, Alvin, was not David's guy. He wasn't the guy to hire him. So I also understand David starting fresh, getting a head coach of his choosing with the roster he has kind of put together now. But as far as some people we could see, is it Ty Lue? Okay, is it a reunion of Cleveland? David Griffin was the GM, or was a guy in the front office in Cleveland. Ty Lue obviously won a championship in Cleveland. He chose to hire Lue after firing Blatt. So maybe we bring Ty Lue back to be the head coach of this young and up and coming roster. Not sure. Ty Lue hasn't really proven to be a coach who can develop younger players. He can, take LeBron, help LeBron get to an NBA finals and manage a older veteran roster, but can he do it with a younger up and coming roster? Not sure, but definitely a championship caliber coach. We've seen it in Ty Lue. Jason Kidd is another guy out there, not so much the championship level experience, but a experienced point guard, who could help maybe your point guard in Lonzo Ball. He's been a head coach a couple times before. He's a assistant coach right now, so he is coaching experience, lots of it. He's also has lots of playing experience. He's an all-time point guard in the league, so lots of experience on both sides. Jason Kidd could very well be the next head coach, and don't really love the hire, but he could very well be the next head coach, has experience as well. How about Mark Jackson, a guy who does have experience developing young guys, a guy who, if you don't remember, had the first run with Golden State with a younger Steph Curry and Klay Thompson. They really took their stride when Steve Kerr came in and became the head coach. But Mark Jackson was the head coach when those guys were young, developed those guys for a couple of years, and as soon as he left, the next year we saw them win a championship. So Mark Jackson definitely is worth giving some credit to when talking about the development of Steph Curry, Draymond Green, Klay Thompson, Harrison Barnes, those young players, that young roster who won a championship again the year after he left. So Mark Jackson, could definitely be in the run for this position. Kenny Atkinson, a guy who not really a big name, but a guy who I like a lot, who really developed that young roster in Brooklyn, got that team led by a young D'Angelo Russell, looking to prove himself after being traded from Los Angeles. Kenny D'Angelo take that team to the postseason despite not being, the players on that team, not a team you would look at and say, oh yeah, they're going to be in the playoffs. Not a team you would see, you would think would do that. They won a game against the Philadelphia 76ers. Kenny proved, in my opinion, he can develop young players at least somewhat. So Kenny, in my opinion, should at least be in the running for the position. So there's a few guys: Ty Lue, Jason Kidd, Mark Jackson, Kenny Atkinson. There's a few guys who I think should be in the running for this position. I can see any one of them, pretty much any one of them, being the head coach of the Pelicans going forward. I would be pretty much happy if any one of these guys. I think, in my opinion, I would try to go either more on the veteran side, like Mark Jackson, maybe Kenny Atkinson, who can prove, like I said, who's proven he can somewhat develop the young players. But I go veteran with a guy like Mark Jackson. Obviously, we'll see. Maybe you go Fizdale. Maybe you go Ty Lue, who's already won a championship. There's lots of options out there. I think they'll make the right decision. David Griffin, I think he'll make the right decision. Whoever he does choose, he's going to walk in to a very good and young roster for years to come if they can keep them together. Zion, Brandon Ingram, Lonzo, Drew Holiday, guys right there who can easily get, in my opinion, guys who can get you to the postseason if healthy all season. They need the right game plan, right coach. They need the right game plan, like I said. That's really important. The right offensive and defensive game plan, both sides of the basketball, because they have guys who can do it on both ends. They need to utilize that. I understand the move, getting rid of Alvin Gentry, not a guy who has proven he can be a consistent winner. But I still think he will find work elsewhere, at least as an assistant coach, maybe not a head coach for a little while, but at least as an assistant coach somewhere else, I think he will go, if not a head coaching position. I kind of like the move by the Pelicans, starting fresh with this young and up and coming roster. So I'm very intrigued and interested to see what they do with this roster, and what they do to fill that position in the head coaching, the head coaching position, which obviously is one of the most important positions, especially with such a young roster. So I'm really intrigued, interested to see what they do to fill that position. I'm going to go ahead and take a quick break. When I come back, I want to talk about those potential upsets, some of the upsets we just might see in the first round of the postseason. Okay, guys? Don't go anywhere. I'm going to be right back.
Check out the show that's built on the MMA, from the UFC to extreme cage fighting. They got the fights covered. Check out the GSMC MMA podcast. Get the latest news on past or upcoming fights. Join us as we talk to and about some of the biggest names in the MMA, past, present, and future. When it's the fight game, there's just one show to check out. GSMCpodcast.com/MMA-podcast. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
All right, welcome back. What is going on? Like I said before the break, let's go ahead and talk about some potential upsets in the first round of the NBA's postseason, which again kicks off today. So it kicks off today. I think the first round is going to be very interesting. There are a whole lot of interesting matchups in series. Games are going to be all day. So if you're listening to this on Monday today, chances are there's a basketball game going on right now as well. So while you're listening, if home, why don't you go ahead and flip on a channel, and chances are a basketball game is on right now. So it's going to be on all day. We're going March Madness style with the NBA's postseason, trying to get it done as fast as possible. But like I said, it starts today. Lots of intriguing matchups. I'm very excited for the late game, the game that's going on tonight, which is going to be the Los Angeles Clippers against the Dallas Mavericks. So I'm very excited for the matchup of the Clipper and the Mavericks. I'm excited to see what those two matchups look like. In the regular season, they have had some close games. Luka has been playing very well. Kristaps has been playing very well as well. So I'm very excited, I should say, for the late game tonight. I think 8 or 9 o'clock is when the game should start for most of us. But let's go ahead and start talking about some of these potential upsets that just might happen, because especially this year, with the neutral playing ground, no home court advantage, this has the potential to be the year of upsets, more than ever, really more than ever, than we have ever seen before, maybe than we will ever see again. And again, it's because of the neutral playing ground, no home court advantage. Everyone is staying in the same hotels or going and playing in the same arenas, the same courts. So no real advantages for any team. But let's go ahead and start off with the matchup and the potential upset everyone seems to be talking about. Everyone seems to have an opinion on this. Everyone seems, to be on a side. And, I understand both sides, I want to say. But this is the Los Angeles Lakers, against the Portland Trail Blazers. That is the matchup I am talking about, and that is the matchup a lot of people seem to be talking about. And if this upset did in fact happen, I don't know how likely it is, but if it did in fact happen, I do think this would be the biggest one in the postseason. This would be the biggest one possible, and it would be the one everybody would be talking about. It would have the biggest effect on basketball as a whole, knocking out LeBron James, Anthony Davis in the first round of the postseason. LeBron James has never been out in the first round, so that would be a first for him. So that would another reason why it would be the biggest thing possible. And just to break it down, how it could possibly happen. Okay, just to give you guys a little explanation behind it. Los Angeles, with the loss of Avery Bradley especially, has no real perimeter defense. They can't defend the three. Damian Lillard has been on fire especially in the bubble, averaging over 37 points, 9-10 assists, 29-30 points in the regular season as a whole. So he's been balling. CJ has hit some clutch shots late, and he has been playing very well. So take those things into consideration as to how this might happen, but I don't like Portland's matchups against LeBron James, arguably the best player in the game today. I don't like who they have to guard LeBron. Okay, I'm not in love with their matchups to guard LeBron. I don't know what is the bigger hole. Like, what's the bigger hole in the defense? Is it not being able to guard the three ball with shooters like Damian Lillard, CJ McCollum, Gary Trent Jr.? Is that the problem? Is it us not being, is it them not being able to guard that? Or is it the Trailblazers not being able to guard the Lakers and their best player in LeBron James, who is obviously capable of a monster performance at any given night? Especially if there's no defense paying attention to him or that can stop him, I should say. Obviously he's who they should be thinking of, but no one who can really match up against him. So it really depends. I don't know what is the bigger hole. Is it not being able to guard LeBron or not being able to guard the three for the Lakers? I'm not quite sure what it is. Either way, it's a very intriguing matchup. Very fun series, potential for an upset, but I'm not quite feeling the Portland Trailblazers upsetting the LeBron and the Lakers. Not quite feeling it. It's going to be a fun and interesting series. We'll see what hole is biggest, for which team, and we'll see. Not quite feeling the whole Trailblazer thing, but we'll see. Don't count them out, as I talked about on my last podcast. But let's go ahead and move on to another intriguing matchup, and that is Utah and Denver. I really thought when I saw they were going to be matched up, I really thought Utah had a good chance of upsetting Denver. I think the teams are pretty similar, not too much star power, somewhat deep teams led by two young stars. Jazz have Gobert and Mitchell. The Nuggets have Murray, Jokic, and then, a lot of other complementary players to go along with them. Utah, not as many. They're missing their best three-point shooter in Bogdanovic. And now the reason I'm not loving this Utah matchup against the Nuggets is because Mike Conley has left the bubble. I think his son is being born, or will be being born soon, and he left the bubble to see his son's birth. Rightfully so. Props him for doing that, doing the right thing for him and his family. But that leaves a hole defensively and offensively, for the Jazz. Conley would obviously probably guard Murray, and you want at least 15 or so points and a handful of assists from him as well. So they're going to be missing their best point guard offensively and defensively. If he does not return, I don't give the Jazz as good of a chance. I do think it's going to be a close series. All three games so far in the matchup, in the regular season series, all three times they have played, the games have been very close. They've gone either way. I think Denver has gotten the best of Utah every single time. So watch out for Utah. They haven't beaten them once in the regular series. That can kind of bite the butt who hasn't lost. That can kind of bite that team in the butt, not losing yet. That team who hasn't won one yet gets hot and takes over. So we've seen it before. I think we could see it with this team. They need Conley to be dangerous to upset this team. I think they really need him on the offensive and defensive side, but maybe on the defensive side even more than the offensive side, honestly. But I really like Donovan Mitchell. Rudy Gobert's healthy, so you have those two guys that are good on both the offensive and defensive side. Jokic and the Nuggets have been playing very well. We've seen them, play their starters up into the third quarter, up into the, against the Lakers and the Clippers, and we've seen them in those three quarters be very close, and the competition be very close and very intense. So they sat their starters in the fourth quarter, ended up losing the games, but through the first three quarters, while their starters were healthy and playing, the games were all very close. So not sure who to give the edge to. You want to give it to Denver right now because Conley is out of the bubble. But if Conley was in the bubble, I might be choosing the Jazz for the upset officially. But without him, there's a hole on the defensive side. There's definitely a hole on the offensive side. But we could very well see an upset. You don't want to count out this Utah team, especially if Conley can come back while this series is still going. But while Conley isn't there, I still favor Denver. Denver is my pick with no Mike Conley. If Conley's there, I see it being interesting going 6 or 7 games. He is going to be the X factor of the series. We'll see if he can come back. If not, I am favoring Denver. Either way, we could see a potential upset in that series as well. Let's go out east for the next one, and that is with the Pacer-Heat matchup, Pacer against the Heat series. Also a very intriguing matchup, okay? Miami is 3 to the Pacers 1 in this series, in the season series this year. But either way, the Pacers are a very deep team. They are finally looking healthy, not something they've really been all year. TJ Warren is balling. Oladipo seems to be pretty healthy. They seem to be in Brogdon's playing very well, so they seem to be clicking. Pacers are deep and healthy. The matchup is very good against Miami. You have a couple of arguably stars like Oladipo and Warren. You got Butler and Bam, and then a whole lot of other complementary guys to go with them. So both teams, in my opinion, are similar, and I do think it goes at least 6 games, maybe even 7. But I am giving the edge to the Miami Heat because of the Jimmy Butler factor, the clutch factor. I like him as the best player in the series. Despite TJ Warren playing out of his mind right now, I see him cooling off. Jimmy, guarding him, taking it personally, and I like Jimmy Butler and the Miami Heat in this matchup. But I do think it's going to be a close series, but I favor the Heat. All right, the last series I want to talk about, and arguably it could very well be the most intriguing matchup now, and that is the Oklahoma City Thunder against the Houston Rockets. It's came out and said, Westbrook is dealing with a hamstring injury, will miss game 1, might miss more time in the series. So Westbrook's out game 1. That's intriguing for a Houston team who goes as far as their 2 stars take them on a given night. If Russell Westbrook and Harden are not having a good night, one of them has to pick up the slack. Not so much coming from any other teammates, so they need both of those guys, especially in the postseason. It really is a shame for a team in the Houston Rockets that every year in the postseason they seem to have a chance and then they go through an injury. Hopefully it's not the case this season, but Westbrook out game 1, could be out more games, and the Oklahoma City Thunder are deep, okay? They have multiple guys who can go out and score 20 points on a given night. Chris Paul, Gilgeous-Alexander, Gallinari. They have multiple guys who can go out there and score, or Dennis Schroeder. Multiple guys. There are 4 right there who could score 20 points every night in the series. Chris Paul is leading very well, arguably the best he's ever led, this young team. We'll see how much time Russell has to miss. I do think that is going to be the deciding X factor in the series, even more than the Mike Conley factor. This is an even huger, and even bigger factor. Russell Westbrook will be the X factor. If he is in the series, if he's back in game 2 and plays the rest of the series, I see Houston winning and it not being as close as it would if he misses time. If he continues to miss games in this series, I don't want to count out the Oklahoma City Thunder. They are a deep team led by one of the best point guards in the league in Chris Paul, so don't count them out. I do think it's going to be very intriguing, very interesting. Hopefully Westbrook can come back 100% and the Rockets can be healthy in the postseason. Not something you can say that the Rockets have been in the last few years. So hopefully they have no injuries ruining their season again. Hopefully, they can go as far as their 2 players can take them. But like I said, there are going to be tons of interesting matchups in this first round. That's why I'm talking about it again. It's going to be going on all day, also pretty much all night. And it's going to be being like that all week, as this first round. It's going to be more than ever with this first round because we have more teams. It's going to be less and less going forward as we shrink, as we go forward in the rounds. Less and less teams, less and less games, obviously. So watch as many teams, as much basketball as you can while it's going on. We're going to continue to shrink and get closer to the final outcome, but tons of intriguing matchups in the first round. I see lots of potential upsets. You guys heard it here first if anything goes down. But basketball's going down all day, all night. It's great to have it back. I'm going to go ahead and take my final break of the show. When I come back, let's go and talk about what a success that play-in tournament was this past weekend, and let's talk about why the NBA needs to keep it in the seasons going forward. Okay, that is coming up next.
Check out the show built around the women of MMA. From the UFC to the extreme cage fighting, we got the fights covered.
Listen.
It's the Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast. The latest news of upcoming fights, discussions of previous matches. Join us as we talk to and about the biggest names in women's mixed martial arts, past, present, and future. When it's the women's fight game, you know where to listen to. The Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast.
All right, welcome back for my final segment of the show. Thanks for sticking around this far. Like I said before the break, let's go ahead and talk about the NBA's play-in tournament that took place this past weekend on Saturday. And it was a success in my eyes, in my opinion, and I think it should be something we continue to see going forward. I think they should be implemented, especially when the race for the playoffs, or race for the 7th and 8th spot, especially that 8th spot, are as close as they were, as it was this year. So years going forward, I think it should be something that is implemented into the game. The race for the 8th seed this year, as we know, was insane, especially in the Western Conference. Not too much in that Eastern Conference, but in that Western Conference, the race for that 8th seed was intense, was insane. It came down to that final game in the seeding game. It came down to the final seeding game in that play-in game. So it came down to the very last game, the last second of basketball played. It came down to it. So that's a point in my favor for it. It should be implemented, and it was a success, and it was needed, especially for this year's postseason, which it was so close. It was needed to make sure we got the best, team in that 8th spot. It was needed this season, especially with the shortage of the regular season, it being cut short, not playing the full 82 games. So it was definitely needed this season. But going forward, if they do end up shortening the season, which is something they have been discussing for a long time now, that could be something they do, shorten the season, do the play-in tournament, still helping those teams which are battling for that 8th spot. But like I said, it came down to that final game. I think the Suns are pretty much robbed. I think we can all agree they were robbed of not being able to play in that play-in game, or even being able to play for that play-in game. They did everything they could. They went 8-0 in the bubble. They did not lose a single game. 8-0. Beat every team they played. And they didn't even have a chance of making that play-in game because of the other teams who won in comparison. So, the cards didn't fall in their favor. They were depending on other teams to lose. So they were depending on other teams. It wasn't just them. They did everything they could, like I said. Still fell up short, didn't make it. But like I said, they were so short, were so close, ended up coming up short, falling short. And I see it being just as, if not even closer, just as, if not even more close in the coming years. Why? Why? It's because Memphis, remember them? I talked about it in my first segment. Memphis shouldn't be getting any worse necessarily. The injury to Jaren Jackson will be a blow to that roster, but for the most part, that team should be improving, getting better. So barring any other huge things, Memphis shouldn't be going anywhere in the next coming years. They should be just improving. Shout out to the Grizzlies and Ja Morant, what they did this season one more time. Phoenix, like I said, have proven they are capable of making the postseason, playing high level basketball, going 8-0 in the bubble. To me, they've pretty much proven they have what it takes, not to win it all, but to play very good basketball in these high level moments. All of these were must win games, and they won every single one of them. Pressure was on. They won despite of it. They proved capable, in my opinion, of making the playoffs. They have young stars in Aiden, and Booker, so I think they are very capable of making the postseason if they continue to develop and play well together. New up-and-coming coach in Monty Williams, if they can figure it out, I think Phoenix will continue to be a threat to make that 8th spot going forward. Sacramento this year, last year, has been a threat, has been in the hunt for that 8th playoff spot as well. A very good young and up-and-coming team, also looking for the right pieces to click it all together, waiting for the young pieces to develop and kind of click all at the right time. That's kind of what Sacramento's waiting for. It's kind of what Memphis is waiting for, kind of what Phoenix is waiting for. It's kind of what the Pelicans are waiting for. I want to talk about them as well. Pelicans also should only improve depending on whatever head coach they decide to hire. But with the players on that roster, if they're all kept together, I think they should do nothing but improve and get better. So the Pelicans are going to continue to be fighting for that playoff spot. If they can be healthy, I like them making it. Minnesota as well, their stars in Karl-Anthony Towns and D'Angelo Russell, they have both been in the years for a number of years now. They can prove they can do individual things, both being all-stars. So they can be all-stars, but can you guys win? It's now time for them to prove they can win. They have each other. They have other all-stars. And like I said, they have Towns, Russell. They have 2 all-stars on that team, a decent roster to go with it. So it's about time for them to prove that they can win and make the postseason. And don't forget about the juggernaut in Golden State. They're going to be right back next year. Steph. They still have Steph, Clay, Draymond, Wiggins, and now a lottery pick, a $17 million trade exception. So they have pieces to make a move. So don't count out them going forward. They're going to be in the postseason for years going forward. So you got all of these teams I just talked about: Memphis, Phoenix, Sacramento, the Pelicans, Minnesota, Golden State, San Antonio. They've always been relevant. Somehow they've been relevant for the past 2 decades. They seem somewhat relevant, at least. Also, San Antonio doesn't seem like they're going anywhere. So there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 teams who could be fighting for that 8th spot next season, or a postseason spot next season. So with all of that being factored in, and with the play-in game being a success this year in my eyes, a game lots of people seem to watch, and an intense game went right down to the wire. Clearly the 2 teams were very close in talent. There's a reason it went right down to these 2 teams, right down to the wire in the game. So I see it being very similar in years to come, with all of those teams I just listed improving, doing nothing but getting their teams together, and like I said, improving. I think it's going to be just as, if not even closer, a race for that 8th spot, for a spot in the postseason. So I think it's going to be even closer next year. Having that being said, I think it's a great idea for the NBA to implement this play-in game, play-in tournament, and have it be a thing. We we see in seasons and in years to come. I think it will be in their benefit. It's another game on TV for people to watch, more revenue for them. I think, hopefully it is something we continue to see in the years going forward. I would love to hear your guys' opinion on that and this topic as a whole. Like I said, I think the play-in game and the game on Saturday was a success. I had fun watching it, and it was a very intense matchup. But as for today's podcast, that's going to be it for the episode. Thank you guys so much for listening. Go check us out on Twitter, Facebook, all the social medias, and whatever platform you guys are listening on. Please feel free to leave us a review. We would really appreciate it. Thank you, as always, for the continued support. We got the first round of the playoffs happening tonight. We got games going on all week, all day, all week. My next podcast is on Thursday, so stick around for that. Stay on this GSMC podcast with me, Bryce, Nick. We have the best information coming to you guys, so stick around. I'm guessing to have even more playoff news for you guys on Thursday, so don't go anywhere. I'll see you guys on Thursday.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Basketball Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.